You're listening to Back Pew Convos.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Sal. And this is the podcast God wants you to listen to.
So if you want to remain in God's will, have a sit down.
Grab a beverage of your choice.
And have a listen.
You're welcome.
Feel violated.
Yes.
I shan't be saying the thing that came to my mind to say. Because I'm a Christian.
Yes. Look at you just allowing the Holy Spirit to work its good works within you.
Hey, get out of here, devil. Get my beverage of choice. Mountain Dew ought to just start paying me now.
Look at that. Look at that.
This is the Baja Cabo Citrus Tropical Citrus Punch. Zero sugar Mountain Dew.
That's awesome, man. My drink of choice is water.
Oh.
But I did drink an entire pot of coffee before you got here, so I'm fired up.
Nice.
Bush.
Dude.
Have you ever seen like the really, really old Mountain Dew commercials where they had like the cartoon guy?
I don't guess so.
They're pretty cool. They're pretty funny.
Cartoon guy, you say?
For a commercial from like the 80s. I really don't like how I just referred to that as really old in the 80s because that's when we were born in the mid 80s. So that would mean we are also really old.
We're getting there, my guy. We're getting there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to be 40.
You will be 40 before me. That's for sure.
I'm going to be 40 in just a few months. Months.
It's pretty crazy. Like I think about time sometimes, and it's really weird how we're going to be 40 this year.
Mm-hmm.
And in one sense, it feels like it. Like in one sense, it feels like I've been alive for 40 years.
Right.
And literally at the same time, it feels like I was just in 8th grade yesterday. Like how are both things true? But that's how it feels. I mean, our perception of time is really weird like that.
It is really weird. All of that stuff with time is strange. It's odd.
It has to be the way. Surely, it has to be the way like our brains operate around memory formation or something. Because like when I try to think back to my childhood, it doesn't feel that long ago. Like if I just immediately think back to my childhood, it feels like it was just yesterday. But like if I try to think through it linearly, like timeline wise, I'm like, oh yeah, that was a really, really long time ago. I think about all the things that's happened over the last 20 years, 30 years,
Yeah. 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 It is crazy. Yeah.
Getting older is a weird thing.
I don't know if anyone else feels like this or not, but I almost feel like I've lived entirely different lives in this one life.
Yeah, I feel like that too sometimes.
Like I am like literally a completely different person.
Yeah. I definitely feel like that.
Yeah. That's an odd thing as well.
It is sort of odd, especially when you can like measure out when those lifetimes ended and the next one began. Like, like I can think back to like exact sort of like not literally the minute or the day, but like periods of time in my life where like, oh yeah, that was a completely different me, and then there was somewhere in that year something changed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you can pinpoint those moments a lot of times.
Yeah.
Where the shift happens. You're like, oh, I'm someone different now.
One of the things that's kind of weird for me is because I'm, I work out, run, a lot, is I feel like I keep feeling like at some point my body's just going to be like, no more, bro. But like I still haven't hit that yet. Like in my mind at least, I still feel like if I dedicated as much time and effort into powerlifting as I did before, I could be just as strong as I was. And I'm running further now than I've ever ran in my entire life. I mean, and weirdly enough, what made me think about this is the other day I was doing a leg workout and I was doing lunges, which when I do lunges, I don't do a lot of weight with them. Like I hold like a 15-pound kettlebell and do lunges or whatever.
Yeah.
Not a big deal. But before, even just doing body weight lunges, my knees would hurt. And now my knees don't hurt at all. And I'm like, well, that's weird because I'm getting older and I'm running a lot of miles. Everybody always talks about how bad running is for your knees. Like, literally, my knees feel better than they have since I was in my 20s. So, it's weird. I don't know.
It's weird.
My back, on the other hand, that's a different story.
Yeah. My knees don't. Yeah, my knees do take some time to get warmed up for sure. The other day, I was in a hurry, so I was like, and also I was really tired, pretty worn out already, and it took me some time to even get to like, all right, I'm going to the garage and I'm going to do something.
Right.
So then when I went out there, like the plan was to squat, like barbell squat, like heavy
squat.
And I was like, I'll just do goblet squats. And so I grabbed, I think it was 60 pound is what just out of pure laziness, I grabbed whatever dumbbell was there, which I think was a 60 pounder.
I've been there before.
And but my knees were hating that until after like the first 1.5 sets, and then I was like, oh, okay. It just took me a little bit to get warmed up, but my knees were not feeling it at first. But, it's a lot easier to do the ramp up sets whenever you're doing barbell. For me, it is because I don't have a whole freaking like set of dumbbells.
Right.
To work
I have a
with.
40-pound dumbbell. That's it. So I'll just roll with it. Do as much as I can.
I probably would benefit from just doing some body weight squats as a warm up before I do put any kind of weight on me at all. But usually I'm in a hurry and I just get out there and do it and deal with the consequences.
One thing I do think is pretty cool about, especially considering what we're talking about, like aging, is yesterday I signed up to run the Wendell Foster Half Marathon, which is this Saturday. So, like, I'm kind of to that place in my life to where I'm like, oh, there's a half marathon in 3 days? Sure, I'll do it. Why not? Like, it's just a normal – I'm going to probably run that far anyway on a Saturday. I might as well just run the race and get a medal and have a cool atmosphere. You know what I mean? Like, it's just sort of it's kind of a cool place to be physically where you can – because a lot of people, like, train for months to run a half marathon. It's like a goal if there is just to, like, dedicate months and, a whole 12-week block to train for this half marathon. And I'm to a place in my life where I can just be like, oh, there's a half marathon tomorrow? Sure. Like, that's kind of nice. I know that won't last forever, but but for now, I'm kind of enjoying that. So,
yeah. See, I don't know. I guess I don't. I guess in my mind, I'd always thought that running meant you just run the whole time, and you never walked. But that's not the case.
Here's the crazy thing: there are no rules. You can do whatever you want.
Because I don't know how far. I mean, if I get to walk some of it, I don't really know how far I could go. I might could do a half marathon.
I think
how far is that?
13 miles. You probably could.
I mean, if I get to walk some of it, I probably could do that.
The only kind of rule is like most races have a cutoff time. Like you have to finish by a certain time, but usually the cutoff time is, because there are people who walk the whole thing. You don't even have to run, so usually the cutoff time's like that to where you can walk the whole thing literally if you wanted to. So as long as you make it by the cutoff, some of the longer races like the ultra marathons, they have cutoff times at each aid station because they don't want you to get like 30 miles into a 50-mile race and then be like, oh well, you're sorry, you know. So
Yeah.
they kind of you have cutoff times at each aid station, which is kind of nice too because that helps me like break the race down when I'm doing them instead of thinking like, oh, I've got 35 miles to go. It's like, oh, I got 6 miles to the next aid station and I need to do it in 2 hours. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, like I think the furthest distance I've ever done with anything like that was I rucked like 8 miles one time. But I don't know. Possibly. Possibly I could do a half marathon.
I mean, I'll run the whole thing. I'm sure 13 miles isn't that big a deal to me, but like once you get to ultra marathon distance. Usually anything over 20, about mile 20 is when I'll start to be like, depending on how my legs feel, might walk a little bit here and there. But usually, most of the people that I know who run regularly also agree with that there's something about hitting that 20-mile mark that, like, once you get to 20 miles, you're like, this sucks. Oh,
Yeah.
so, but yeah, I'm going to do it. I don't know. The funny thing about it is it's a weird thing to where like I'm not going to set no PRs, and I probably won't. I ran a half marathon last year. I probably won't even beat that time. Who cares? Who cares?
Yeah.
Like I said, I probably on Saturdays I normally do a long run. I probably would end up running about that far anyway. So
Yeah. I just can't seem to make the time to do all of the things that I want to do.
yeah,
So things get left out.
it's a little bit different for you because you have to work so early. Like I go run before work. I get up at 4, go run, then I go work, and then I do my weights after work. So like you don't really have time to do anything before work. So you're trying to backload everything. That's more difficult. I
Yeah.
think it's more difficult.
Yeah. I mean, I could maybe do like a shorter run 1 or 2 days after work, depending. I mean, depends on what I do with my lifting because the lifting is a priority for me over running or anything like that. But the right now I have yet to actually finish the whole week just because I have not had time
Yeah.
to get all the stuff in. But my current plan, I was doing 3 days a week full body, and I don't know. I guess maybe it's the age thing, or maybe I've cut my calories too low because I'm trying to lose weight. But I was plus I was on overtime and doing a new job where I'm both more physically active and requires more brain power from me.
Yeah.
So I was more exhausted physically
You only have so much of that to go around for sure. So
like being mentally and physically exhausted on top of it, and I was not recovering well. So then I was like, well, I'll do shorter. I'll split things up instead of doing full body. And so anyway, my current plan is like an upper Monday, lower Tuesday, off Wednesday, push pull legs.
Yeah.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
So far, what I've found to be most successful for me split wise is to do it more days per week, but body part specific because I can get it done. Like yesterday, I did a workout in 25 minutes. Just come down here because I'm just hitting that one body part, getting in, getting done. And so it's less time. I can just do it whenever, and I find for me that's more beneficial, just for time wise because, I'm busy too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my workouts were when I was doing full body, they were like at least an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And now when I'm going out there to do them, I can get them done in about 45 minutes.
Yeah, 45 is not bad. I mean, 25 yesterday was more because it was a leg workout, and I signed up for that half marathon yesterday morning. So I was like, well, I'm not going to destroy my legs, So
Right.
I did a pretty quick, light workout. But most of the time, it's in the 30 to 45-minute range. But depends on how much I'm messing around between sets.
Yeah. Yeah. It's easy to get distracted in between sets.
Yeah.
I try to superset at least a few different exercises. So that it shaves a little bit of time off,
Yeah, for
not
sure.
having that extra rest in there.
especially when you're doing bigger body parts. Because if you're like doing a full upper body, I mean, you know, you're doing push pull right now, but if you weren't and you were just doing like upper lower, you could do like a push supersetted with a pull. You know what I mean? And then you're
Yeah.
like a bench press, then a row.
Yeah. Well, so like on the upper and lower days, I can do that for sure.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing.
Well, what else is up?
I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I'm getting more settled into my new job, so that's good.
That is good.
Not as stressed about that. I don't know. I've had a good day. It's been a good day.
Good.
I've felt much better. I don't know how much I want to say
Right.
on the podcast,
Right. I didn't figure so.
but yeah, I'm in a better spot mentally today for sure.
That's good.
It's nice out, nice weather.
The weather just it automatically seems to do that for just
Yeah.
a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of warmth, puts you in a good mood just naturally.
Also, last night the Bible study really did kind of help me feel better.
Yeah.
Reading because I hadn't even read it because I was like, oh my god, I'm not in a mental space where I even care about doing this right now.
If anybody knows that, trust me, I got you.
Yeah. But then I read it, and of course, the one section that stuck out to me about not worrying, and it's like, well, all right, and that really did change things for me.
I thought it was pretty funny, or not really funny, but kind of ironic or interesting that knowing where your headspace was at the time and then knowing what was in the section like that was just that was already pre-planned for us to read. Sort of just like, well, that's I don't know what to say about that. What else do you expect?
Right? Yeah, it's good stuff though.
It was actually good for me too. I haven't been in the best place, mentally with a lot of the stuff. And so it was a good one. We had a good session last night, I think. It felt real, it felt like we were a group of friends gathered in a room having a real life conversation about life and how we approach life, and it felt good. It was nice.
Yeah, I think it went a little bit better. Well, I guess it depends on what better means, but I was going to say better than last week's, but considering last week's had arguments and shouting over,
Yeah,
mainly on my part.
I mean, disagreement isn't inherently bad, but I
Right.
felt like this week's was better just all around because even before, I think I mentioned this in the episode last week, but even before people started arguing last time, it still was kind of flat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this time it felt like there was engagement all around the room. And it's just like where I'm at with my spirituality, we're just in the perfect place for me that like it's literally the meat of my spirituality and my faith. Like Matthew 5, 6, and 7 are foundation for me. Like I especially was reading through it today. I think it's 625 or 624. I can't remember the number, but like just pinpointing that one verse, I was like, this is everything for me. Like I don't want to overstate it, but I don't know if I can overstate it. Like this is to me the foundation of everything else that Jesus teaches. Like this is what everything that I believe is built upon. And so it's easy for me to, in this section, be like, this was great,
Yeah. We got one more week.
Yeah. I actually did my soap over 7 anyway, so I wasn't even in 6. But
what verses did you do from 7?
well, it's difficult to say verses because I just picked like a huge chunk of verses, but it was mainly around the wide gate and the narrow road.
I got you.
In that whole section there. 19 through 34 or something like that.
Highway to hell. That's literally how the NLT translates that.
Pretty awesome. It's pretty great, actually.
It's terrible translation. It may be fun because you read it and you're like, oh, highway to hell.
I like it.
But also you read it and you're like, ugh.
I think it kind of is the highway to hell, though. But that's my interpretation of what hell is.
Right.
You know?
It depends.
When I read highway to hell, I don't think of like eternal flames in some place you go after you die. I think about what it's describing there. That if you hold on to anger and unforgiveness, you create a hell that you exist upon, so yeah, that is the highway to hell to me.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good interpretations of that. And interpretations of better translations.
Yeah.
But but yeah.
Felt like I was going to sneeze, but then it went away.
Oh, I was like, did you fart?
I didn't want to sneeze into the microphone.
I feel like these lights are brighter than normal. I don't think we dimmed them as much as we normally do.
Well, you're usually the one in charge of that, so.
Also, I think that one has more blue light and that one has more yellow.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anywho, I got distracted by the lights. Like I have ADHD or something.
ADHD?
ADHD.
Something like that. So what's our topic for today? What are we talking about today, man?
I don't know. I just want to use that silly voice the rest of the podcast and want to talk about whatever. I really don't know. See, what happened
was
I was listening to I was just trying to quickly find something to listen to at work, and I went to the Spiritually Incorrect podcast, which is the one with J.D. Lionheart and Seth something. I can't think of his last name now.
Seth something.
Right. Seth something.
Yeah.
And they had David Hartman on there.
Grace Saves All.
Yeah, he's been on there several times, actually. And they were doing like a sort of debate thing. And the Seth fellow said something that I was really kind of taken aback by, actually. And it kind of sent me into some more thought on universalism.
Okay.
And specifically what he said was he doesn't think that universalism has a philosophical leg to stand on, which I was kind of like, what?
I mean, that's the funny thing about that is that's my initial reaction is just like, well, that's stupid. Like, that sounds ridiculous. But then, like, I'm also hypersensitive to like thinking things through that sound, because I was actually thinking about this when I was running this morning about how like we have a tendency in church to, like, I was thinking about it in regards to prayer, because prayer is something, I've talked to you about extensively, that I just don't, at least the way that we engage in it in communal settings at church, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I struggle with understanding what it is and what's the purpose and blah, 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 And I was thinking about, some of the things that people have said to me in the past about it. And a lot of those things fit that category of, if you just hear the soundbite and just don't think about what's being said, it sounds really good. Until you actually think about what's being posited, and then you're like, wait a minute, that's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? And so I'm hypersensitive to that. So that was my first thought whenever you said what you said. Was my first thought was, well, it's kind of silly, but I want to think through it and hear what he's got to say.
Yeah. But like none of the arguments really like stuck out to me as like really good arguments I hadn't heard before.
Yeah.
But it did make me wonder if like I'm just not hearing those arguments for what they really like. Have I really thought through all of those arguments to the point where those arguments really don't have any sway for me, or have I just gotten to a certain point and stopped?
Yeah.
Rather than thinking all the way through them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like maybe I thought all the way through it and haven't.
Yeah.
So that was a thought I had, because I mean, I respect those guys. Like, they're intelligent fellows, and for him to be like, I don't think that universalism has a like scriptural is when you hear more often.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people will admit that universalism has a strong philosophical argument, but they struggle with the scripture and tradition aspects of it.
Yeah.
But that's not what he said. He didn't go to scripture or tradition. He went to the philosophical argument, and I was like, I've never really heard anyone say that
Bold strategy,
before.
Cotton.
Yeah, exactly. And so it kind of made me think, like, well, maybe I need to rethink some of this. But then that brought out another thing. Because I started immediately doing the whole argument in my mind where I was like responding to the things that he was saying and like thinking through
Yeah.
uh, the philosophical side of it. And like, but I had a realization in the middle of all of that. And that is, I don't want to be. And maybe it is true that I haven't thought all the way through it because I don't want to be convinced that it's wrong. Because if I was convinced that universalism was wrong, I think I would be. I don't know that I'd be an atheist, but I might would be agnostic.
Yeah.
I might would be like, well, then I don't know. I think maybe there's a God, but I don't know what that God's like.
Right. I think that the what's interesting about what you're saying to me is it's really in the same stream of thought as something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I may have actually mentioned it to you. I don't know if it was on last week's episode or just in a randomly, but I've been thinking a lot about sort of universal truth and how our like we find something that really resonates with us and we feel like this is the message that if everybody would just see things the way I see things, that the world would be fixed, right? Like we want to believe that that's the way the world works. And lately I've come to think that maybe that's just not true. Like maybe some people some philosophies, since that's the philosophical argument, maybe some philosophies resonate more with some people than they do other people. You know, like to me, I agree with you on the universalism thing. Like if there's an afterlife and it's not and all these presuppositions that are built into this argument are true and it's not universalistic, I don't know that I care about any of it anymore. You know what I mean? Like I agree with you on that, you know, but I don't.
Yeah.
But if this guy is saying that he doesn't find that argument philosophically compelling, and he finds whatever he, you know, whether he's a annihilationist or whatever he is, to be more, you know, compelling, then maybe just believe that. Okay, like I don't need to convince that guy. I guess, like I don't know. And I mean, we can have that conversation. You know, I'm just kind of spitballing it because we haven't. Yeah, I haven't thought through it. You know, you're just now telling me, and I'm thinking through it live time. But um, that's a theme of thought that I've been thinking through lately. At least is that universal truth. You know, like I was thinking about it more from the perspective of like some, you know, like some people. If you just get this vision of it's a strong argument that Kruger makes a lot, Baxter Kruger, of like if you understand your acceptedness and you know the mediation of Jesus Christ, that you're included in Christ, you're already dead to sin, you're already resurrected. If you get all of this vision correct, it corrects everything downstream. Like all you need to do is understand this, and everything else will fix itself. And maybe, but maybe not. Maybe there's another way of thinking about it that this other guy resonates more with him. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't change the objective truth of the matter. You know what I mean? Like if eternal conscious torment is literally true and it's better for you to believe universalism, that makes you a more faithful follower. That doesn't change the reality of whatever is the reality. You know what I mean? But it can change the way that you operate in your faith. So
Yeah. 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 I don't really know what else to say about that, I guess. I did think it was interesting that one of the things that JD said, because he leans pretty heavily into the paradox
yeah.
of it all. But he was basically what he was saying was that essentially everyone is, if you have any sort of belief in God at all, in one sense, you're already dealing in a paradox. The existence of God itself is in a sense, a paradox. But then like where you're locating your paradoxes in your in your theology, it can shift depending on who it is. And uh, at least that's what I took away from what he said. I don't think he said that exactly, but that's what I took away from it. And I think he's right though. I think that like you're gonna like for the folks that are more like eternal compass torment, like the paradox there is like the goodness of God. Like God is both good and just, and
Right.
eternal compass torment exists. Like that's where you're locating that paradox. And I think that for me, where I refuse paradox is at the because I'm pretty comfortable with paradox myself. We've had that discussion a
Yeah.
lot.
That's exactly what I was thinking when we were talking about it, actually.
But I think that's what one of the things that JD was trying to point out, and I recognized it, and I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely true for me, and probably for everybody, really, if you really got into it. But like, there's some areas where we're okay with paradox, and some areas where we're not. And one area where I'm not okay with paradox is the goodness of God. Like it's something we've talked about before, of like if this is true, then words themselves mean nothing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's the paradox, and you've used it with like Trinity and other things like that. Like the words themselves almost seem to mean nothing.
Yeah.
But that's where I am not comfortable with is good and evil. Like if this, like I understand that like God is good and I'm not God. So like if maybe you can make the argument that like maybe eternal compass torment is good and I just don't recognize it as good because I'm not God. But the word good and the word evil have to mean something.
Yeah. Or else there's no point in us talking about it, right? I mean,
Right.
that's what I always think about, like love. You know, people, that's what inevitably the thing, well, then how do you define love? What is love? Who do you get to define love, or does God? And if God says it's love, it's love. And it's like, well, I mean, I guess on a very high level, sure, I guess that is true. If God exists and God is all powerful, the creator of all things, then he can define love however he wants to. However, we can't talk about it. If there's no objective meaning to the word, if you're telling me we have no comprehension of what the word is,
Yeah.
then there's no point in even using the word. Like it means nothing. And especially if you're telling me Jesus is the representation of the enfleshment, this is what I should look at and see. This is what God is like. Well, then I think to figure out what good means, we look at Jesus. I think if we figure out what love means, we look at Jesus. So what do we see? You know, like,
Right.
I think that there has to be some sort of objectivity to it like that. So yeah.
Yeah. But like going back to what you said before, I gave that little spiel. Like that is something definitely that I wrestle with is like, what is the objective and what is the, if it works for you, it works for you.
Yeah.
You know, like, will we one day find out that R.C. Sproul, God help us all, was right about was right about everything.
Well, that's my approach to the whole idea of rapture, right? Like I find the doctrine of rapture to be pretty absurd. To be honest, there's no place for it in my understanding of theology. I think it's ridiculous, to put it bluntly. Like just to not mince words and to be clear about it, I find the entire idea of it to be ridiculous.
Right.
However, if it's a real thing, I'm not worried about it because I'm living my life and operating within the world no differently than I would if I believed it to be true. And if I would admit that I was living my life differently now than I would be if it were true, then that tells me I should probably change the way I'm living my life or do something. You know what I mean? Like, so do I think it's a ridiculous doctrine? Yes. Do I care though? No. If it's true, right on. Like, I'm not worried about that. You know what I mean? And so, like, that's how I approach.
Yeah.
Like I'm convinced of universalism, you know, as far as afterlife. If there's an afterlife, I'm 100% on board with universalism. If for whatever reason I'm wrong about that, I'm not worried about being wrong about that. Like I'm just not. It's not. I don't feel a need to argue it with anybody. Like, okay, like I don't care, you know.
Yeah. I still feel a little bit of like wanting to know the arguments and argue it.
Yeah.
I really am more interested in just knowing the arguments for it and against it rather than trying to argue it with someone.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I think part of my posture with it though is more probably just in line with my entire shift in my theology altogether. You know what I mean? Like that,
yeah,
what I just said about the afterlife and my thoughts on that is you could apply that to literally anything in my, and it's kind of true for me currently in this current moment.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to hear the philosophical argument why he thinks universalism doesn't have a philosophical leg to stand on. Because yeah, on first glance, it seems ridiculous to me.
They really didn't get that far in the conversation, honestly. Much of what was said had to do with freedom, you know, and if you are actually free or not. And like, is it, because if God knows from the beginning, like even if you wanted to say, like if you wanted to like locate a moment of salvation, like if you're going to use the whole like ABCs, what is it? Accept, believe, confess, admit, believe, confess. And then like if you're gonna do like the Romans road, the whole like traditional evangelical like salvation experience,
Right.
like this is when I got saved, when I believed. Like even if you're saying that's it, that's how you get saved, and that is a decision that you choose, and it is free. You have the freedom to choose it. Even if all of that is true, if God knows that from the beginning, it doesn't necessarily mean that your freedom, that you don't have freedom in that moment to choose.
Right.
But if God only created people that he knew would choose, then in a sense, there you still have freedom, I think. But that was
I think it's very hard to talk about.
yes,
But you almost have to look at it from you're talking about two different levels, and we're trying to talk about them on the same level, right? Because we're talking about like freedom on our level to make a decision from the human level, but you're talking about God's perspective, with all the assumptions, an omnipotent God and an omniscient God,
right.
then you would be, those are two completely different. You can still be free and make your decisions, but this God already knows all the decisions. Like if God is,
Yes.
if we actually truly believe the omni things that we say about God, then that God already knows all of those things.
Right.
That's always been my problem with the argument, is that if you think that God knows everything and always has known everything, then there is no excuse for that God to have created creation to where a single soul perishes and burns at hell for all of eternity. That God is not good to me. There's no convincing that can be made to me that God is good. Because if God just can truly do anything and truly knows everything, then that God would have created a creation to where all beings are free, and yet he knew all beings would freely choose, which is, surprise, surprise, the way I think universalism works, freely choose life.
Yeah.
Like there's no other excuse for me that I can accept. Like to me, any other option than that, God equals evil.
Right. Well, and like one thing that they brought up was that in a sense you already accept a sort of paradox of good and evil in God because of the problem of evil itself.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of the logic. That was one of the things that was put forward in the podcast when I was listening to it. Is like, uh, basically, folks like me or David Artman were just kind of trying to relocate the problem or doing something different with the problem. Like ultimately, what we're saying is the problem of evil is in a sense, it is a problem, but it can't be a problem for all of eternity. But like their point was, if the problem of evil doesn't make, like if the problem of evil is a real problem and it doesn't make God evil, if there's a way for us to understand the problem of evil in a way that doesn't make God evil, then there probably is a way to understand eternal conscious torment or annihilationism in a way that doesn't make God evil, just because it is actually appears to be evil from our perspective. So, like using the problem of evil in a sense is what they were doing to say that we're everyone's already kind of doing that. with something that appears to be evil, and
but there's no resolution to that evil.
yes, exactly, yeah,
That's what seems ridiculous to me. I don't
right,
know. Like, are you just saying that evil wins? I guess. Like,
yeah,
don't talk. Then you, I better not see those people singing that song in church that said he's never lost a battle and he never will, because he dang sure did. Apparently, like,
but I mean that was but all of that was tying into the whole freedom argument, because like if we're saying that God allows freedom in the kind of freedom that leads to evil now, then why wouldn't God allow the freedom for that evil in the eschaton? You know,
I think you can, but he's not bound by time.
right?
So,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, that's the. I feel like that's still the point that people keep missing. Is like universalists, at least the way that I envision it. It's not saying that God is for. Like, we don't believe when it says every knee will bow and every tongue confess. We don't believe that's a forced confession. We don't believe it's a forced bowing of the knee. It's a willing. Like, you have that freedom and will make that choice. It's literally just saying, I believe God's goodness outlasts all versions of evil.
yeah,
That God isn't bound by time. Like, I've always found that to be one of the most ridiculous arguments. Is like, you've got all the way up until your point of death to make this decision, and then it's like our death binds God's hands to where he can't do anything. Like, is this life after death or not? Is there you,
right, yeah,
you can't have your foot if your feet on both sides of the fence here. Is it afterlife or not? Because if it is, God's still Lord over that life. Like, he can do whatever he wants to. He's not bound by our death. Like,
yeah,
it's like we're cognitively, we almost want to talk about a life after death, but we can't really envision it. So it's like there's that disconnect there between that. But I don't understand it. Like,
yeah,
it's not. No one's saying that you don't have freedom and that God's going to make you. You don't want life, but I'm going to give you life, buddy. It's like, no. I mean, if there's life after death, it's literally just saying, I think God wins in the end. Like, everybody will freely choose it.
yeah.
And is that ridiculous? Yeah, sure. But to your point, and something we talked about last week, what part of it isn't ridiculous?
Right.
Like, what part isn't absurd? That was my thought when you were talking about paradox, is like, what part of it isn't, in a sense. There's paradoxes all over the place. I mean,
Yeah.
you said that too, but
Yeah, I mean, and JD makes that point, and I still haven't read his book, but like makes the point that like even your own existence is in a sense a paradox. Like if God is real, then like we're already dealing in paradox just from the very beginning.
and that was really my thought when you said that you weren't willing to accept paradox on God's goodness, because I actually do think it's a paradox. Because what you're saying is that in spite of evil, in spite of my sense of justice, right? Because from our perspective, we want retribution. That person committed a wrong and he deserves to pay the punishment for it. That's our perspective. So in saying that God mercy extends beyond that, that God has a way of forgiving that person and healing that person and redeeming that person, that in itself is a paradox to me.
I mean, yeah. I guess when I was talking about the good and evil, I just meant like
Right.
being able to actually use the words and they actually mean something coherent.
Right. Yeah, you're not
You know?
comfortable redefining terms just to fit your theology.
Yeah.
And I would agree.
Yeah. I'm not willing to give up any sort of any idea of like I might actually know what goodness looks like to some extent.
Yeah.
And that was a really kind of really flubbed that up a little bit, the wording, but like basically I'm not comfortable with the idea that we as human beings just have no conception of what goodness and beauty and truth actually are. And like maybe it turns out that what I think is good is actually evil. Or what I think is evil is actually good. I mean, if that's the case, then like we can't talk about that.
I think what I find to be the most difficult about that whole scenario is like you're kind of just saying my interpretation of all this is right, and I'm going to make that fit, even if I have to redefine terms. Like that's what I hear when I hear people talk like that. Like, well, no, maybe it is good, and we just don't know what good is. Maybe God sending people to hell for all eternity is loving. We just don't understand what love is. Like, I mean, first of all, okay, maybe
Right.
that's a possibility, or maybe you're just wrong. Like
Right.
you just that's what it sounds like to me. The most from a rational perspective, I'm the skeptic here. The rational, like from the rational perspective, the most likely scenario there is you're just wrong. Instead of redefining terms, maybe your interpretation of what you're reading is wrong. Maybe you need to metanoia and change the way you're looking at things. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, all of that, it just it got me thinking. Like, have I actually thought all the way through all of this? Have I really understood the arguments as well as I think I have? And I think I really have understood for the most part. I mean, I'm like I said, nothing that they said was anything I hadn't really
Yeah.
heard before, but it just kind of got my wheels turning on a little bit.
I thought it was interesting that you said you kind of, as you were thinking through it, kind of came to the realization that you don't really, not that you don't care, but kind of you don't. Like, if I haven't thought all the way through it, I don't know if I want to know that. Like, I'm just kind of, I feel like I'm in a better place where I'm at,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't, because like I said, I don't know what I would do with that. But that I don't want that to be a reason for me not to keep thinking through it.
Yeah. It is interesting, I guess, because, like, let's just thought experiment here. Like, what would it change for you? You know what I mean? Like, if you became suddenly convinced tomorrow that eternal conscious torment was the truth and that universalism was a fantasy that you've dreamt up, in what positive way, not just what changed, but in what positive way does that changes things for you?
In a positive way?
Yeah. Specifically put that in there for a reason.
I don't think it changes anything for the positive.
Yeah. That's what
Depending on what you mean by that. But yeah.
Well, that's what I meant, because I was trying to, because on one hand, I understand what you're saying. Like, if there's an objective truth, I want to know what it is. I want to know the objective truth. But then also thinking through that, like, but in what positive way? Like, if you're wrong about universalism, and by coming to the realization of that, and what positive benefit? Like, to me, it only, at least from the chair that I'm sitting in now, it only seems to bring negative things to me in my mind.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I don't know if I even would want to know that.
Right. Yeah. That's exactly what I meant by that when I said that. Because I would be more likely to accept that, like, if I was convinced that scripture and philosophy, like the logic, all of it actually pointed to eternal conscious torment, I would probably be more likely to just be like, well, I don't know. I think there's a God, maybe, but I don't know what that God's like anymore. I don't know who that God is anymore, because if I'm convinced that this God of the scriptures, of this tradition that I've been given, is this God that would create beings only knowing full well beforehand that they would choose to deny him, he created them anyway, or created some sort of experience, created the possibility of some sort of place or experience of eternal separation, or of eternal torment. If I was convinced of that, then I just don't believe in that God, which leaves me with, what God do I believe in? Which leads me into, I just am agnostic, I guess.
Yeah.
At that point,
Right.
you know?
But it's a weird tension, right? Because there is, I don't know what that is about us. I mean, I guess I can't speak for everybody, but there is a part of me that just always wants to know the truth, even if it's uncomfortable, right? Like, I'm always in the pursuit of truth. That's what's led me into some of the scenarios I've been in my spirituality, is because rather than just sitting comfortably where I'm at, I want to know the truth. There's just something about me. I don't know. But on the other hand, I can see that to where it's like, I don't know why I would want to know, because it doesn't change anything for the positive. Luckily, so far, all of those things I've rethought, uh, I feel like at least have led me into a positive. Not to say that it's been a smooth sailing, but I think it's led me to a healthier place in my life altogether. But I don't think that that change does that in any way.
Yeah. No, I don't.
And I don't know what people expect you to do with that, right? Like, because this is a topic that people get pissed off about. People talk about
Yeah.
it a lot.
Yeah.
You get fired up about it, and I see it from our perspective. I say our perspective as universalist, because
Yeah.
what you're talking about is no God's better than you can imagine, right?
Yeah.
Like I understand that argument and why you would, if you're talking to people who believe in eternal conscious torment and you want to show them a more loving, a more, forgiving, graceful path, that makes sense to me. But like if you don't believe in that, I don't know why you would want to convince someone like me or you that eternal conscious torment's real. You know what I mean? Like why would that be such a strong argument for you? Why is it so important to you to convince me that eternal conscious torment's real?
I guess the two reasons that came to mind immediately when you said that was if you do believe that that is just the objective truth, or two, if you think that I'm going there for not believing like you believe, then
Well, I mean, but to me, that the whole argument goes back to what I was saying about the rapture, and that's why I pause, asked the question. It's because like, I, if I live my whole life thinking universalism is right and turns out to be wrong, I'm still living the same path. Like it doesn't change anything. So like to me, the point I'm making is that it seems like if that's really a strong argument for you, your whole religion's built on fear. That's all it is. Like because the argument that comes to mind is, well, if people aren't scared of hell, they're going to go on sinning and doing whatever they want to do, and that's just objectively false.
yeah,
I'm living proof of that.
right,
Not to say that I don't sin because I fail daily,
yeah,
but I am no worse off now. Let's just say it that way. I am no worse off now than I was when I thought people were burning in hell for all eternity.
Mhm.
I actually take it more seriously now than ever.
yeah, yeah. That was another thing that I was thinking about when I was thinking about that possibility. Like, well, like, let's say I was convinced today that eternal conscious torment is actually, I mean, to say it's the objective truth, I don't think that I could be convinced that it's the objective truth, but I could be convinced that it is the truth of this tradition. Does that make sense? That distinction at all?
I think I think so. I think I understand. You're
Like,
basically just saying that you would acknowledge that what this tradition is teaching is eternal conscious torment. Whether it's objectively true or not, can't say, but that is what this tradition's teaching.
yeah, like if I was convinced that the scriptures specifically,
Right.
like the Old Testament and Jesus himself actually believed in eternal conscious torment and taught it, that would lead me to a place where, like, well, then I just think that maybe it would mean I don't know that Jesus is God. It would mean that I don't know that this whole tradition stemming from Judaism knows God. If God's real, I don't know that it can't be this God.
Yeah.
That is what I guess what I'm trying to say. I still don't think I'm saying it very well.
No, I think I know what you're saying. You're saying it wouldn't necessarily make you an atheist. You would acknowledge there may still be a God, but I don't think it's this one.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it's the one from this tradition,
Yeah.
from this holy text, from this,
Right.
you know. So, but when I was thinking through that and what that would mean, um, uh, I was kind of thinking like, well, then where would that put me? And I was thinking back to my first deconstruction, and I really do think it would put me, because what made me think about this is what you were saying a minute, because what I thought about whenever you were talking about you not being any worse off now than you were then when you believed in eternal catastrophe, I was thinking, well, like, yeah, I mean, part of that's probably just being mature, like maturing and growing, and like now you all the experiences you've had that have shaped you to who you are right now, like all of that goes with me. And so because of that, I don't think I could ever be an atheist. Maybe. I don't think so though.
Yeah.
I think that the person that I was in that deconstruction when I was an agnostic or atheist, whatever, that first time, if it happened again, I would not be the same
Right.
agnostic or atheist that I was then. For one, I have way less bitterness about it.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely. I would agree with that 100%.
and so even just that, I think, would make me feel more free, more at peace with my agnosticism or atheism, even than I was the first time. I don't know if that makes sense either, but I was just kind of thinking through like the possibilities of like, well, what if I was convinced? Like,
Yeah.
what would I be like, and who would I be, and on all of that. And I really do think I would be completely different than my first time around because of all these experiences. I don't think I could ever go back to that level of because I was pretty like had a lot of resentment and bitterness and stuff like that that is gone now.
I think you put it the perfect way, though, when you said it's just you've grown. Like, that was how many years ago now? 10, 15 years ago. Like, you've got 10 or 15 years of experience under your belt.
Yeah.
Experiences, like you're a different person
Yeah.
now. That person so like you said at the onset that you feel like you've lived different lives, like that version of you is dead and gone. You know
Right,
what I mean?
yeah.
Like it's not going to be resurrected. That one's gone. You can change, you will change and evolve over the coming years, but you can never go back to where you were.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely.
We brought it full circle there.
I don't think yeah, I don't. I thought about this a while ago. I thought about saying it, and I didn't know if I wanted to say it, and I'm gonna say it.
Okay.
It's nothing bad. I was just, I just don't know that. I just don't think that there's a single thing that could ever convince me that eternal conscious torment is real. I don't think that and I say that the reason why I hesitated to say that is because I do like to think of myself as open-minded, and I'm open to evidence, and like I kind of hang my hat on that like I'm not dogmatic about anything. Like I'm open-minded to evidence. You know what I mean? But I went ahead and said it anyway because it's, at least where I'm at currently, I cannot fathom any kind of evidence that would convince me that eternal conscious torment is real. Like, I think the best that you could do, and this is kind of what you already said, but I think the best that you could do is to convince me that this is what the Bible says or this is what Jesus taught, and that still wouldn't convince me that it's true. It would just make me think the Bible's not true. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
it would make me think, well, I guess that this faith, this tradition that I've existed in isn't true. It wouldn't change my mind about God necessarily. It would just,
right.
I mean, and that's why I say that. I don't think that there's anything that could possibly be shown to me that would change my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think so either.
Maybe that makes me closed-minded. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you also, who knows? Like, if this is all just kind of imaginary, made up, but like, if I was convinced, I don't know how I would handle it. Maybe I wouldn't just abandon the Christian faith altogether.
Right.
And I don't know.
Well, and part of why I say that too is just because, like we were saying, kind of the only evidence you could provide is to convince you that this is what the Bible teaches, and it kind of just depends on the way you hold the Bible, right? Like the way that the kind of authority I give the Bible, the way I interpret it, the way I understand it, it doesn't have that kind of authority over my life. So it wouldn't be that big a deal to me. That would not convince me.
Yeah, see, it does get a little bit trickier for me, I think, than it would for you, because I think that I do give it more authority than you do.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a fair statement.
So, in that regard, it would be a bigger issue for me. than for you. But I still don't know what the end result would be. You know?
But one of the things I keep thinking about, I've actually thought about this a lot on different topics, is I don't even know how you convince people about the Bible. And what I mean by that is this: we're always just constantly reinterpreting the thing. Like, I was actually thinking about this from kind of a negative mindset a couple of weeks ago, to be honest with you, because it's something that we've talked about a lot online and offline. It's like my struggles with how people hold the Bible to such authority, but like what they're really holding to authority is their own interpretation, because like you're just constantly reinterpreting. Like if someone shows you something like you've got this in the Bible wrong, like you don't ever just say, well, now the Bible's wrong. You just it's over the years, it's constantly reinterpreted and reinterpreted. So I don't even know how you would convince someone the Bible's wrong about a topic or says something to you. Just constantly are going to reinterpret it to align with the way you see it all. I don't know.
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying for sure. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I know what you're saying.
I mean, I'm not really making a judgment about it here either. I'm just pointing it out, that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but I really do need to go back and reread Sanctifying Interpretation. Like, I think that's kind of the point, is that we're meant to interpret it. It's the scriptures are meant to be interpreted, and there's something about that interpreting process, I think, that is salvific, that brings sozo and wholeness.
Yeah, that's basically what Pete Enns writes in How the Bible Actually Works. He writes it as though, like, what we want, what we desire is a black and white rule book. Do this, don't do that. But the problem with that is there's no growth in that. It doesn't cultivate wisdom. And the point for him, the point he's making in that book, is that the purpose of the Bible is to cultivate wisdom within us, so that when we're in these situations, we know how to respond, we know how to act, we know how to do things. And just having the teacher stand over you telling you, don't do this, that's not applicable to real life, because I've said it a million times, but real life, real humans aren't black and white. Like, you can't account for every situation and scenario in black and white rules. You have to. It's like the difference between in teaching a true or false question, a yes or no question, or an open response, critical thinking question. And the purpose of the scripture should be, as Pete Enns is, according to him in that book, is to cultivate that wisdom to where you can take a topic, topic, and expound upon it and apply that critical thinking and logic to it, and come with a positive result that produces fruit in your life, So, and I think that makes sense to me. I don't know. I still have a little bit of bitterness towards some of it, to be honest, but it's not really with the Bible, though. It's really more, for me, my problem with it is how people use it. And,
Right.
Because on one hand, we'll say things like that, and we'll say, part of it's meant to be reinterpreted, and to do all that stuff. But then we sort of wield it as though it's not our own interpretation of it. You know what I mean? And that's where the problem comes in for me.
The Bible says it, and I believe it.
Yeah.
When it's really more like, I believe this is what the Bible says, and I believe it.
Right.
Or I say this is what the Bible says, and I believe it.
I mean, I get a little bit weird about it with like the way that we hold it to like a unique, like we want to, on one hand, we want to hold it to a unique place. Like there is no other, this is a unique authoritative book. And on the other hand, we treat it just like any other book. So it's, to me, we sort of play both sides of the fence there, which I'm pretty uncomfortable with. But yeah, it's not really important. It's not even the point of this conversation. Let's just say we've said it before, and I'll say it again. I've got a complicated relationship with it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I don't know. I started to say something, and I caught myself thinking maybe that sounds kind of judgy, and I shouldn't do that.
Man, the Holy Spirit's really been working on you today.
I guess, yeah. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I started to say it anyway, but I guess I won't.
Third time's the charm.
Yeah. I definitely know what you're saying though. It does get frustrating and it is complicated. What I was going to say is I think that if you don't have a complicated relationship with the Bible, then you're maybe just not reading it enough. That's what I was going to say. But that does sound a little bit judgy.
Maybe, but I think it's true.
It may be true. It may sound judgy, but it may be true.
Either that or you're just smarter than me, I guess, which is always a possibility.
Right.
But
Yeah. True. Could be.
not likely, but possible. So you're saying there's a chance.
I guess it's possible that Dougie Wilson or the Allie Best Duckies or the Alyssa Childers or the Mike Wingers of the world are just way smarter than me and really know really what the Bible really says. And I just don't. But maybe not.
Yeah. I'm pretty happy in my own lane, really.
Yeah. I
You
just threw. No.
The dude abides. Just abide. Just do my own thing.
Yeah, I mean, I really am to that kind of, really to that point where I'm just comfortable, I guess, with the uncomfortability, if that makes sense. I'm comfortable with the not knowing everything and being okay with it.
Yeah, for me, for sure. I've actually went way further in that direction lately than I than I have in a long time. Where I know what's important to me, what I think is the foundation of all this, and what I care about, and all the rest of it is just conjecture to me. And I'm happy to have the debates and the talks about it. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I don't think anybody knows, and I don't care. I mean, I do, but I don't. I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do really have a struggle with that though. Like as far as knowing what is worth quibbling over and not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like, I mean, on the one hand, because what came to mind for me was like how we, like the church and like the theological disagreements and stuff that we have at church. Like, I mean, on the one hand, I'm kind of like, yeah, I believe what I believe, and I'm comfortable with where I'm at, and like, if you don't agree with me, like, okay. But then on the other hand, there is part of me that's like, maybe there's some times when it's worth,
Yeah,
when it's worth having the debate.
I think it really just does depend on the setting and the time. You know, like what you're talking about there is our community. You know, or community, not just specifically our community, but to the listeners, your community that you're in, or any of our communities. You know, your church is your community, and that's kind of the purpose is that we're coming together. You know, and I do think that setting, there are things worth talking about or worth. I mean, I say fighting as long as it's done in good spirit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's different than just like random people. Like, who cares? I don't care what Allie Beth Stuckey thinks or what she thinks about me. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? She doesn't think about me, first of all, but she doesn't know I exist. But I don't care. I mean, I get what you're saying though, because she's someone who has a voice.
Yeah.
She's selling books. She gets more views than we get on our podcast. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And she's talking to people and they're listening to her, you know, and that part of it is I don't know that there's any way to avoid feeling, and I don't know if you should not feel a certain way about that, you know, like I think but I also think that that's different than feeling like a need to justify myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I do. That is a tension because sometimes I'm not able to discern whether it is just me trying to justify myself or if it is a genuine, like, it's something I've been talking about for a while, like in one sense, like about the whole holy anger thing. Like, is there, like, am I just like angry with someone and holding on to this and not forgiving someone and being bitter about it? Or do I have every freaking right to be angry about this?
Right. And usually that is where I draw that sort of line or how I try to discern, which I don't have a good track record of that either, to be honest.
Mm.
But now, as a more mature me, where I do try to draw that line, it's like I feel like there is a need. Like if there's something being said out on the internet to an audience, or from the pulpit, or in a Sunday school class, or whatever, where you're speaking authoritatively to an audience, I think that those things are worth pushing back against. They're worth calling out, like the way Tim and April, you mentioned them in the last episode. They do it a lot, right? Where they're responding to Allie Beth or whoever else is on the internet saying stuff. And like, I get that some people may be like, man, this is really negative. But at the same time, like, I think that that voice needs to exist. There needs to be that pushback. But like, when it's just regarding me and my personal beliefs and my faith, like I don't really feel a need to justify myself to anybody. You know what I mean? Like I believe what I believe, and that's fine. You don't believe, like I don't feel like it's worth arguing with somebody in a private setting just to justify myself versus trying to correct what is potentially harmful that's being taught to other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you understand that difference I'm trying to make there?
Yeah, because there are certain, even people that aren't technically an authority in the church, if they have a voice in the church, then if they're saying some off the wall stuff, then that has the potential to. But then the problem is, who's to say what is and isn't off the wall?
Right.
Especially in a Protestant church like ours, like there's no rules,
Yeah.
basically. You know what I
You
mean?
got your articles of faith. I think our church has, 10 of them?
Something like that.
You got, as long as that's sort of like the only guidelines you have, really.
Yeah. So then I don't know. I also know that we have been, I mean, yeah, it's fine. It's fine to say we. I was going to say I'll speak for myself, but I think I can throw you in there for sure. We also have been ones that folks were trying to silence us because of things that we said that they thought were off the wall, and we had a voice that in the church that maybe needed to be
Right.
And I don't know, maybe I'm saying too much. Maybe I'm being a little too open right now. But the thing is, I know from that perspective too, as someone who, so like it gets a little tricky for me because like now I don't want to then now be the one that's like saying, oh, we need to silence this person because they're dangerous. Their theology is dangerous to the congregation. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But I also can't help but think that that's wrong. And
well, I think that though, I don't think if you approach it in a conversational sort of way and not a, hey, you're an idiot, you're wrong, and you need to be silenced, but instead it's like, it's someone you have a relationship with, you know what I mean? Like if we're talking about like your personal church or whatever, like for example, me, like let's say me and you think I'm teaching something that's ridiculous at church, and like you are comfortable enough with me that you wouldn't just come to me and be like, hey, you're foolish, you need to shut up. Like you would come to me and be like, hey, I heard you say this, and because of this reason and this reason, and then we have a talk about it. And maybe I disagree with you. Maybe I like, you know what? I never thought about it like that. You're right. I mean, I think that's the difference. It's not let me try to go behind your back and get you silenced or removed from your position. It's let's have a conversation. Like church, we're supposed to be a family, a community, a relationship. So let's talk about it, right? And I think that's how Paul talks about it in the New Testament writings. It's like, within your community, you talk about those disputes, you talk about the disagreements that you have. And I think the way he said it is like you talk to them twice, and then the third time, like if there's no reconciliation, there's no reconciliation. You know what I mean? But
yeah, he says something about going to the elders of the church.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I don't know. See, that's the thing, because all those things can be applicable to you. Like, if you think you're the good guy,
yeah,
in that story, then everything there follows. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I could, like, say that was the issue, and like you were teaching something that I thought was off the wall at church, and I like came to you privately, and I talked to you, and like nothing I said seemed to like change your mind about it. but I was convinced that I was right about it and you were wrong.
Yeah.
And then maybe I came to you a second or even a third time, and we had a conversation about it. And I wasn't a jerk about it. We just had the conversation. It was a cordial conversation, but we still came away at the end of the day disagreeing with each other.
Yep.
Then what? If I'm going according to like what that scripture says, and I would go to the elders of the church, so I would like go to like the board, or I would go to the pastor, and I would talk to them about it, and then what? You know what I mean?
Right.
All of that gets really tricky, and all of that depends on if you're the good guy or the bad guy, if you're the one that's in error or not.
Right.
But how do you know that? How do I know that I'm the one that isn't?
Yeah, I don't know, because I'm
heretic?
trying to put myself in the situation as the accuser, not the accused, because I'm track record wise, maybe it's
Usually the accused.
But because I don't really know, like, I think there are some things that I would be sit down and have a conversation with somebody about and be like, man, I don't think this is right, and I think that we need to think about this. And if they disagree with me, I think I would just be like, oh, okay, well, try.
Right. Yeah.
That's just me, though. That's just my personality. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I was just using that scripture sort of as like a template.
I know it.
Like if someone was going to try to handle a situation in which they thought someone was in error and teaching something was wrong.
But I'm just saying, like, for me, that's what, before, I don't even know that I would go to anybody. I would just probably have that conversation with you. And if you just disagreed with me, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, I think you're wrong, but
right.
Okay. Because I'm a nobody. I don't know. And I know I'm fallible. Maybe I'm the one that's wrong.
But then where is there? But that goes back to like what started this whole thing was like, are there things that are worth fighting about? Are there things worth getting that sort of like, no, we cannot be teaching this at church?
Well, I think, oh man, yeah, whenever we're getting into meat and bone stuff here, man, because I think that my approach to it really would be, do I need to find a new community? Like, really?
Right.
I mean, you know what I mean? I think it gets to that point of like, are we teaching this? And like, I disagree with this. And you try to have that conversation with people. And if they still disagree with you, it's, I don't know, maybe I just find a new community, like someone who's, vision, articles of faith or whatever it is aligns more with what I find to be truth or palatable, I guess, I don't know.
Yeah, that just gets way more complicated whenever it's like in my specific situation, we're talking about like church that like my family helped to build,
right. Yeah, for sure. Every situation's unique and different, but I think about it from a perspective of, well, I guess what I'm really getting at is everybody, is it me versus one other person and we're having a disagreement, or is it like me disagreeing with like the majority of the people in the congregation? Because if that's the case, I'm the one that needs to go, not everybody needs to conform to what I think is right. You know what I mean? Like, that's sort of the way.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
But I acknowledge what you're saying. Individually, especially in a community such as ours, where we live in a small community, and then our church is a small church within a small community. So it's very, like you said, your family built it and all that. I'm not saying, we're just using ours as an example of how weird it could get. And,
yeah,
as far as I know, neither one of us are actually having issues with our own community.
No, I mean, I don't. I don't have any plans of leaving or anything, but I mean, I certainly have some issues with things that I hear in Bible studies and in Sunday school from time to time. Like some of the theology that I hear, some of the things that I hear come out of other congregants' mouths, and sometimes people that do have some sort of voice. Yeah. I'm kind of like, I don't know. I don't know that I want people to be taking that to heart and believing that and taking that as building on that as a sort of foundation.
I also do think it is pretty individualistic as far as like who we are, because like I also am pretty self-aware of myself and know that like I'm different. I think about things differently that a lot of people would find heretical, that like people aren't going to agree with. And so like I understand that, like, maybe because I understand what you're saying. I feel that too all the time, but like and I obviously I think I'm right, or I wouldn't think the way I do. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I also recognize that most people aren't going to agree with me. That most, so it really is one of those you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them things. In
Yeah.
the words of the great prophet Kenny Rogers,
I'm Kenny Rogers. Well, now that I have sufficiently said way too much and got way too personal, what else do we want to talk about?
I don't know, man. I'll tell you what. I've actually, I've read Matthew 6 about 8 times. To be honest, I really liked it. I've read it in about 8 different versions, and I really took it to heart. Kind of like what you said. Our Bible study last night was really good. I
Yeah,
thought, and
yeah.
it was edifying to me. I'm sort of a oddball. I guess I've already mentioned that, but I'm someone who, depending on how things go at church, I'm someone who can be really affected by it, as far as negatively or positively. Yeah, I'm a little bit spiritually bipolar, as I've mentioned, and that means I'm easily affected by things like that. And so, if I hear something that sets me back, it can set me back for a couple weeks. But then, a good conversation like last night really kind of reminds me of why I am so attracted to the message in the gospel, specifically Matthew 6 and the Sermon on the Mount as a whole, and it just reminds me of what it is that's important to me and why it is so important to me, and why, like, no matter how much I struggle and through all the valleys I go through and all the tough times, that I may have spiritually, uh, I always have that. Like, I can't let go of that. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I was saying earlier, I've sort of gotten to a place where I'm very comfortable saying I don't know. I don't know much of anything anymore, quite frankly. Um, but I believe in love. Like, I believe in the message, what I interpret to be the message of Jesus. Uh, and I believe in it, not just because of some abstract reason, but I think it's demonstrably true. I think it can be proven. I think I've lived it myself. That's the hardest evidence you can have, is when you feel like you've lived it. So um, that resonates with me, man. So I've really been hyper focusing on that Sermon on the Mount, kind of trying to get back to my roots of what's important to me.
Yeah.
And some people probably won't like to hear that, but because it reminds me of sort of my more perennialist views, like, because that Sermon on the Mount, if you just take, like, the things that Jesus said, they're pretty applicable to, like, the sayings of Buddha, Zen, the Bhagavad Gita, like a lot of those different. There's a lot of overlap there, so it kind of, and I love all that kind of stuff, So that,
Right. Yeah. I don't think we spent enough time in Matthew 5, really. I think there was so much more that could have been talked about with Matthew 5.
oh man, Matthew. If you
Really
take just Matthew 5, 6, and 7, just those 3 chapters, like, that's a year-long study if you want it to be.
Yeah,
And
for
that's
sure. Yeah. Yeah, I almost wish that's what we would do.
and maybe part of it is because, for me, it's because I am seeing things through different lights now. But it's just, to me, it's pretty interesting how you can see things, especially if it's something like the Sermon on the Mount that you've read through a million times. You just slightly see things differently, and it just completely upends everything. Like, I pointed it out on last night in Matthew 6:15, which is where it says that, whatever measurement of judgment you judge other people with is the measurement of judgment that God's going to judge you with. And there's a way of reading that's like, that makes God kind of retributive. It makes him repay evil for evil. Like, there's a way of reading that, which is traditionally the way I've read that passage, to be honest.
All the stuff he says the chapter before that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, if you actually, again, take to heart that he said all those things before, that's not what God does. You have to make sense of that if you're going to
Yep.
hold it to any sort of authority. And like, that goes back to what I was saying about demonstrably true, though. Like, I think that it's just true, you know. And what I pointed out last night was, you've heard the old saying of like, hey, holding on to anger or unforgiveness is like swallowing poison and expecting it to hurt the other person. Like, if you hold on to anger and unforgiveness, like, you're not going to achieve that inner peace, that inner wholeness, that sozo that I think the path that Jesus is laying out there in the sermon leads to. It's not so much that, from my perspective at least, that there's some sort of divine judgy God sitting on a throne somewhere, just like, oh, you whatever, repaying evil for evil. It's literally just the fabric of reality that, like, Jesus is laying out a path of liberation, like a path of life, of true life, of kingdom life. And if you want to walk it, this is the way you do it. It's not external to you. It's literally internal to you, that like, if you hold on to this unforgiveness, you can't have that peace that forgiveness brings you. You know what I mean? Like, if somebody wrongs you and you hold on to unforgiveness, that wrong that they did to you is always haunting you. I mean, it only hurts you. That's what he's saying there to me. It's just,
Yeah.
Like I said, I think I've lived that. I think it's demonstrably true. You don't need a judgy God to make that true.
Yeah.
You know? And just seeing things through that light for me has been so eye-opening this time through it,
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was saying about, because in chapter 6, Jesus mentions several times. I think he does it with almsgiving, he does it with prayer, he does it with fasting, where he says, like, if you do it for basically the kudos of those around you, for for the attaboys that everybody else will give you, for the Facebook likes and the Instagram likes, for the gram, yeah. If that's why you're doing it, then you've already received your repayment for that. And I think what he's saying is that your satisfaction, your gratification that you get from doing it is from that temporary high that you get from being accepted, or those pats on the back that you get from your fellow man.
Mm-hmm.
But like, in the overall context, what he's saying is that's not true satisfaction, though, because you're only going to need more, like, I need people to start worshiping me. You know what I mean? Like, I need more likes. I need more of this. It's never a high that lasts forever. Like, true wholeness only comes from that internal work that you're doing. And I think that's so much different, though. That's so much different than the way I've traditionally read that, but it's so much more real to me. And it's so much more universally true and demonstrably true. And you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know what you're saying.
I mean, he doesn't talk about it there. I mentioned it to you in a text message today, but I think the easiest example to see it in is like sexual desire, right? Because like, everybody has sexual desire. Most people, unless you got some sort of hormone deficiency or whatever, or you're asexual, whatever. But most people have those sort of desires, and like, they can be extremely strong desires. And when you gratify those fleshly desires, you do feel a sense of gratification for like however long it lasts, but then you need it again, and you need it again, and you need it. You know what I mean? Like, that's not true wholeness. Like, you're trying to fill an eternal hole with something that's temporary, that's not truly satisfying. It's only temporarily satisfying. And I think that's the whole purpose of what Jesus is laying out there in chapter 6, is you can't serve both things. You can't, wherever your treasure is, that's what you'll feed, wherever your heart is at. Like, if you're dead set on fulfilling those fleshly desires, that desire for fame, for sex, for money, like, then that's where all of your attention is going to be, and it's never going to be enough. You are never going to. That's why the gate is wide to destruction.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, the path to life is narrow because it's not. It's upside down. This upside down kingdom. It's upside down to what we think we want, but it's where actual liberation comes from. It's where actual freedom and satisfaction and life comes from.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the message. That is the message. It's so good. Like, that just gets me that reminds me of why this is important to me,
Right.
because I've been on the other end of it where I was trying to satisfy all of those. I mean, I still am, because that's the thing, is it's a practice. It's not a snap of the fingers. No, now I don't worry about fleshly desires anymore. Like, no, I still struggle with finances. I still struggle with sexual desires. I still struggle with, any sort of desires that I have in the flesh.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
something that's a lifelong process. And what makes it difficult is you can be locked in for 23 hours and 30 seconds, locked in, conscious, mindful, aware. You slip up for that 30 seconds, man, and like now next thing I know, I've satisfied the lust of the flesh, or attempted to. You know what I mean? Like it's a constant battle.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
But it's not legalism, because it's not about a God accepting you or rejecting you. It's not about keeping rules. It's literally about, it's no different than trying to, like, if you want to lose weight, you got to eat in a calorie deficit. If you continue to eat in a calorie surplus, you're gonna gain weight. Like, it's, to me, it's that simple, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just a wholly different way of looking at it than I've ever looked at it before, really. But that's the way that my faith has evolved over the years, and it's more real to me now than it's ever been. In that way, at least some of it isn't. In
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
So,
Amen.
I've been pretty pumped about it today, really, about what is important to me. For whatever reason, I don't know why we're like this, but, or maybe I don't. Maybe I should say I don't know why I'm like this. I'll speak for myself.
Speak for yourself, you guy.
I'm gonna speak for myself here, but I don't know why it's so much easier to focus on the things you disagree with, the negativity, instead of the things that you do agree with, the things that really resonate with you.
Yeah.
That's a big problem for me. Is when I'll, like what you were talking about earlier, when you go to church and hear things that you're like, I don't know about that. Like, and I was saying, like, I'm just spiritually bipolar enough for that to really set me back a couple of weeks. It's because, like, I can really, like, for whatever reason, that those negative things, those things that affect me negatively, I can focus on those so much more. I don't know why that is, but it's those edifying things, these things that are important to me. I have to really work to focus on those. And when I do, then I end up like I am now, where I'm just rambling on and on about it, because I love it. It fires me up. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Why am I this way?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I'm like that to a certain extent as well. I don't know that I get as extreme. I don't know that I live on the extremes as much.
Right.
But I definitely, stuff does really affect me like that, for sure. It just maybe doesn't affect me as long or as extreme, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or maybe I just am not articulating it the same way.
Maybe.
But yeah, I definitely know what you're saying.
I think it's difficult for me with where I'm at personally right now, because so much of organized Christianity is more, it seems to be, at least from my perspective, more about believe the right dogmas, and doctrines, and less about the practicality of it and applying, the teachings of Jesus to your life. We've said it before on here that, Christianity seems to be believe the right stuff, you get saved, you go to heaven, everything's good, and then, if you pay attention to what Jesus said and do some of it, icing on the cake, right?
Yeah.
But, like, for me and where I'm at with it, that's the whole message. Like, it's follow the path. The path is what leads to liberation. Like, that's the path to wholeness, to the path to eternal life. You have to walk the path, and if you don't, you're never going to get there. Like, and because of that, it causes a struggle for me because you go to church or whatever, you almost always hear, or if not just church, but listen to podcasts or watch videos on YouTube or whatever, you almost always hear about believe the right dogmas, which from my perspective are almost always theoretical. Like nobody really knows. We're all just trying our best. You know what I mean? But like, and it's almost never about follow the path. And that's the one thing that's important to me. That's the only thing when I said I know what I believe, and I believe, and I think I know less than I ever have before. That's the one thing I believe is the path. I believe the path. All the rest of it to me is just theory, and we can talk about it and we can argue about it. But it's like that old quote from Hillel. It's something to the effect of, the whole Torah is love your neighbors yourself, and everything else is just commentary. Like I wear the shirt that says "Love is my religion." I believe that. That's what I don't just wear it for a fashion statement. Like,
yeah, I had a thought in there, and then you mentioned Hillel, and I lost it.
You'll have that,
but yeah,
Hillel will do that too. But that causes a struggle with me because it's so easy to get bogged down, and especially for someone who's kind of a skeptical person like me, because then it's not just it's all about believing the right dogmas, but some of them for me you're like, well, I just don't believe that. Like I'm sorry, and then you get into that sort of pit of like, I don't belong, I don't fit in, I don't believe any of these things. You know what I mean? And that's sort of why I fall into those extremes so often.
Yeah, I think for myself, I would certainly put more importance on the doctrines and the creedal statements, the tradition and stuff like that than you do. But I definitely hear what you're saying. I think that we have to. I personally think that for myself, I feel like both are important. But to your point, Jesus literally says at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, the one who hears these words of mine and puts them into action will be like the man who built his house on a rock.
Right.
And the one who doesn't is like the one who builds his house on sand. So like I think just that's one thing that we have. I think you've said it like before, but like we have to, depending on your authority, how you view the authority of Scripture, you have to find a way to make sense of Paul's grace alone and Jesus's. You got to do some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's I don't know that, but I really do think that what it is it is because when you're talking about the path, I mean, it's his path. I think that whenever Jesus talks about knowing him, that gnosko, it's an experiential knowing. It's a knowing him in the sense that like you are him, like you are living his life, like you are living the path that he showed us to live, the path that he walked himself. Like it's not that means you're gonna have to walk. If that's the path, if he's the way, that means you're going to have to follow that way.
Right.
So that means you're going to be doing stuff. So there's no like getting out of living this.
Right. And I'm not necessarily saying this is the way I believe or interpret it, but this is something that is worth consideration. I think, you pointed out Paul's grace alone versus Jesus saying this is the path and you got to walk it. Like, yeah. I think it's worth considering. They're talking about two totally different things there. Because I think, generally speaking, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think generally speaking, Paul, when he's using that sort of language, he's talking about what is traditionally taught about with salvation, which is like when you die, where you're going, your eternal salvation. I think what Jesus is talking about is if you want to live a whole, fulfilled life while you're here on earth, you walk this path. This is the way to that path. And then because it's in the Sermon on the Mount, is the Lord's Prayer. Your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. Those are two different. That's the acknowledgement of a heavenly realm, and also saying it's possible to bring it alive on earth, and we bring it alive on earth by walking the path, by living as the way Jesus said. You know what I mean? So I think it's possible that they're talking about two totally different things there. You're saved, quote unquote, heavenly realm kind of talk through grace alone. You can't earn that sort of eternal salvation. But if you want to bring the kingdom alive on earth, we've got to live it. We've got to walk it. You know what I mean? So that's a possible way to hold to intention.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really just kind of said what I said about Paul, just to stay on that point of like, it's what you mentioned before, that like a lot of Christianity, it's all about securing my eternal salvation, and then I don't care about what Jesus actually taught or living it. I don't care about living it. That's why I said that. As I mean, actually, Paul talks a lot about good works, really.
Yeah, he does.
It's not, I mean, so I don't really think that, I personally don't see a huge tension in what Jesus is saying there and what Paul says elsewhere, but I was just kind of going with the vibe.
Yeah. Well, that came to me, so I wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah. I got you.
So, but yeah, man, I don't know. That's where my mind's been, though. Really, I'm trying my best to focus on what resonates with me and keep my eye on the prize, and not get so distracted by the noise surrounding me. That sort of tends to distract me from what is important.
Yeah.
Building
your house on the rock.
And sometimes it gets depressing or whatever when you feel like you don't fit in. But then there's that other part of me that's like, man, I think that there's a need for a multiplicity of voices and communities, and like, I feel like if you're wanting somebody to teach you about the church history or talk to you about the importance of the creeds and all that stuff, then maybe that's your role, but that's not mine.
Right.
You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean I don't have a role. Like, if you want to talk about the Sermon on the Mount, buddy, I can talk about the Sermon on the Mount. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's good to have people, like, you don't need to be a master of everything. You don't need to be everything for everybody, Like, it's good to have a multiplicity of voices who have different interests and different callings and different whatever,
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're saying for sure. It just brought up other stuff that I said earlier also, and but I don't want to go back into all that.
So. Okay. Well, maybe you can try to be everything for everybody.
No, I mean, not about that. I just, because like, I also believe that there is a need for a multiplicity of voices, but then that does run against that tension of like, maybe not this voice.
Yeah. We need a multiplicity, but not this guy's.
Right.
Yeah, I feel you. It's a real tension, It's something worth. I think it's a good thing that you wrestle with it, because you recognize that on one hand, you care deeply about the community and what's being fed. You worry about what's being fed to the sheep. And I think that that's good, but you also recognize your own humility. You know what I mean? Like, you recognize your own fallibility and you take that seriously. You don't just assume that you're the good guy, as you said,
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing if you struggle with it. It should be a tension, I think.
I suppose that's true. So I am the good guy.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yes, I knew it.
You're always going to be the good guy, Sean. As long as you're on this team. I'm the bad guy.
Wait, we're on the same team?
Yeah, man. People do lump us together quite a bit.
Yeah, they do.
That's unfortunate for you.
Yeah, I guess depending on who it is.
I'm sure it's had its negative consequences for you, unfortunately.
Yeah, it has. I suppose. But
hey, what am I going to do? I'm just me. Can't help it.
And I am me.
I am. I am.
Well, bro, I have to urinado, and I'm freezing.
It is cold down here.
Yeah, it's quite chilly.
In the dungeon.
The dungeon?
Well, all right. I guess that means we're done.
I mean, we can keep going if you want.
Nah, I mean, we've been going almost 2 hours. We're good, bro.
Yeah.
Just like usual, we don't know what we're going to talk about, and then we get into ramble for 2 hours. I feel like I did a lot of rambling tonight.
You definitely were more talkative. Yeah, you went on for a while there.
I
but it's
told you,
all right.
I told you I drank a whole pot of coffee before we started. Like, I'm ready, man.
I'm glad you're excited about it. It's good.
It's better than where I was last week.
Yeah.
So,
Perfect theology.
yes.
All right. Bye.